Welcome to Before EJ Weekly. It's your essential deep dive. And we're looking at all this really crucial AI news from late March and early April 2025. You've shared this really interesting collection of reports and analyses, and our goal, as always, is to kind of extract the signal from all the noise, right?
Right.
Not just like skimming the headlines, but going deep and give you the aha moments that really help you see where AI is heading, all without bogging you down in jargon.
Yeah, I think, it's an exciting time. You've really curated a snapshot of a field that just seems to be accelerating at an unbelievable pace. We're seeing, some really big leaps forward in how AI is able to, reason and plan, some really tangible applications. And we're seeing it have a real impact on areas like cancer research. And, of course, the inevitable friction of AI regulation is really fascinating to see how that's all playing out in real time. And then you even have, I guess these early kind of whispers of quantum computing, entering the conversation. And on top of that, we're seeing this kind of surprising, I guess, strength and agility of open source AI.
Yeah.
And, just this explosion of creative possibilities that all these new AI tools are really unlocking. It's quite a dynamic landscape, and we're here to kind of guide you through all the key developments.
Okay, let's jump right into it. First up, some really interesting foundational work coming out of MIT. Their researchers have developed something called LLM-based formalized programming, or LLM-FP.
Okay.
And you can think of this as like giving already like incredibly capable AI models like GPT-4o and Claude 3.5 Sonnet,
Right.
the sort of super-powered assistant for tackling really complex planning challenges.
Yeah.
So what's the core idea here?
Well, what's really smart about LLM-FP is that it helps these really advanced language models, these LLMs, deal with truly massive problems. So imagine trying to optimize, the entire global supply chain for a major industry, something incredibly complex. LLM-FP provides a way to break that down into much smaller, more manageable sub-problems.
Right.
And then, and this is key, it translates those smaller steps into what are called formal optimization problems, right? So these are like highly structured mathematical equations that specialized software can then analyze really efficiently to find the absolute best solution.
Okay.
So the team behind this is Yunan Hao, Yang Zhang, and Chu Fan from MIT's Laboratory for Information and Decision Systems, or LAIDS.
Okay.
And it likely benefited from the resources of the MIT IBM Watson AI Lab.
Right. So instead of just having the LLM try to tackle this huge problem all at once, it's getting to work with a structured approach.
Exactly.
And that leads to, as the research suggests, much higher success rates when compared to just the LLMs tackling these complex scenarios on their own. So why should this grab people's attention? Why is this such a significant development?
Well, if we kind of zoom out and think about the less obvious implications here, this isn't just about, making our existing logistics run a bit smoother. You can imagine a future where AI could design, totally new, incredibly efficient business models that we haven't even thought of yet, all thanks to this kind of enhanced planning capability. And, it could allow smaller companies to tackle, logistical challenges that were previously only within reach of, massive corporations with these dedicated planning departments.
Right.
Potentially kind of leveling the playing field in various industries. The research specifically points to the potential in areas like supply chain management, resource allocation, those sorts of things, but the ripple effects could be much, much broader.
So it's not just about, automating existing processes. It's almost like unlocking these new levels of efficiency and potentially new ways of doing business altogether.
Right.
But it does make you wonder, about how human roles in these traditionally very complex planning and logistics areas, how those might evolve as these AI tools become even more sophisticated and more widely adopted.
Yeah, that's a really key point and a good point. I mean, while we might see significant cost reductions and kind of increased efficiency that ultimately benefits consumers. We also need to think about how this might affect, employment in those specific planning and logistics roles. And so it raises these important questions about, retraining and the future of work in those sectors.
Okay. Shifting now to an application with potentially huge human impact. Google Cloud and the Allen Institute for AI, that's AI2, have teamed up to launch the Cancer AI Alliance, or CAIA. And their goal is to really significantly accelerate cancer research by using AI.
Right.
And this seems like a really big deal.
It is. It is. What's really noteworthy about CIIA's vision is this commitment to building an open, collaborative, and importantly, a privacy-preserving AI platform.
Right.
Right. So the aim is to create AI models that can be shared safely and securely across different research institutions,
Right.
like the Fred Hutch Cancer Center, which is a founding member, without ever compromising sensitive patient data.
Okay.
The technical challenge they're tackling is developing what are called generalizable models, right? So this is AI that can learn from very diverse data sets and overcome the limitations of current cancer AI, which often tends to be quite narrowly focused on specific types of cancer or specific data.
Right. So this initiative has already gotten some support from some initial funders, which suggests like a really strong belief in its potential. So for you, as someone who's following AI very closely, why does this particular application stand out?
Well, if we connect it to the bigger picture, this is fundamentally about the potential for AI to really kind of compress that timeline for discovering cures and more effective treatments
Right.
for a disease that affects so many lives.
Right.
And the emphasis on data privacy, I think, is really paramount.
Right.
It directly addresses this major ethical concern that many people have,
Yeah.
regarding the use of AI in healthcare.
Yeah.
Right. So by creating this secure and collaborative environment for sharing data and AI models, they're aiming to kind of break down those silos
Right.
and accelerate progress in
Yeah.
a field where, time is often the most critical factor.
Absolutely. And the privacy aspect is just so key. People really understandably want to make sure that their medical information is protected.
Yeah.
So as these powerful AI tools are developed and deployed in such sensitive areas, what are some of the things that come to mind that we need to think about, beyond just the immediate benefits?
Yeah, well, I think beyond those immediate benefits, we also need to think about ensuring equitable access to these AI-driven breakthroughs,
Yeah.
right? So will the benefits be distributed fairly across different populations, across different healthcare systems? There are also these questions around, the potential for biases to be inadvertently encoded in these AI models
Right.
based on the data that they're trained on,
Yeah.
which could then lead to, disparities in diagnosis or treatment.
Right.
So really careful validation and ongoing monitoring is going to be absolutely crucial to mitigate those risks.
Okay. So now let's turn our attention to the evolving landscape of AI regulation. So in Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin recently vetoed a bill that was called the High-Risk Artificial Intelligence Developer and Deployer Act.
Okay.
And his concern was that its kind of very stringent regulations would basically stifle innovation and negatively impact economic growth, especially for smaller companies and startups.
Yeah.
And so this seems like a really clear example of this tension that we're seeing
Right.
between, wanting to foster innovation,
Right.
but also wanting to manage potential risks.
Exactly. What's really interesting about this veto is if we look at the specifics of the bill, right?
Yeah.
It was aiming to regulate AI that was deemed high risk in sectors like, employment, lending, healthcare, housing, with a really strong emphasis on making sure there's transparency in how those algorithms work and also on preventing algorithmic discrimination.
Right.
So Governor Youngkin, in his kind of reasoning for the veto, advocated for a more kind of hands-off approach.
Yeah.
Saying, we'd rather rely on the existing regulatory framework, which is under Executive Order number 30, which mainly applies to state agencies and how they use AI.
Right. So you've got this really clear divergence.
Right.
In approach. One is like prioritizing a very hands-on regulatory framework to try to address potential harms. And the other is more of a laissez-faire approach to encourage innovation. And then meanwhile, all the way across the globe, in Australia, their Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA, is actually proposing stricter regulations specifically for AI used in healthcare.
Exactly, yeah.
So what's going on there?
Well, the Australian TGA is considering reclassifying AI-driven medical software into these higher risk categories, which would mean they'd be subject to much more scrutiny before they can be deployed. They're also looking at extending their oversight to areas like digital mental health tools.
Okay.
Right. Recognizing the kind of the sensitive nature and the potential impact of AI in those areas. And this aligns with these broader guardrails for high-risk AI that the Australian government is developing. So it really underscores this importance of accountability and transparency
Yeah.
in applications that directly affect, people's well-being.
So what's the big takeaway here? Like, what's the big picture message you see emerging
Right.
from these different approaches to AI governance?
Well, if we kind of zoom out and look at the really big picture, I think what we're seeing are these fundamentally different philosophies at play regarding how best to manage, the development and deployment of AI. So the U.S., at least in Virginia's case, seems to be favoring a more innovation-driven approach at the state level, whereas other regions, you've got the EU, for example, with its AI Act, and now Australia with its more targeted approach to healthcare, are taking this more cautious, risk-based stance.
Right.
Right? So this global divergence, in these regulatory strategies is going to, without a doubt, have a huge impact on how AI technology actually evolves and is adopted worldwide.
Right.
And it really highlights this ongoing and oftentimes very complex debate about finding the right balance, right, between fostering technological progress, but also safeguarding these ethical considerations and consumer protection.
Okay. Now, for something that feels like it's really on the cutting edge, the intersection of quantum computing and AI.
Right.
So Quantinuum, a company working in the quantum computing space, has announced a generative quantum AI framework,
Okay.
Or GenQ AI.
Okay.
And this just sounds like we're entering this whole new realm of possibility.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
What's so groundbreaking here is that this framework leverages data that is generated uniquely by Quantinuum's H2 quantum computer
Okay.
to actually train AI systems.
Okay.
And the claim is that this quantum-enhanced training leads to AI models with much higher fidelity.
Okay.
So that means they can model reality with much greater accuracy,
Right.
enabling them to then tackle these incredibly complex problems in fields like drug discovery, financial modeling, and even logistics, problems that are currently just beyond the reach of even the most powerful classical supercomputers that we have today.
Right.
And they anticipate that their upcoming Helios quantum system will further boost these capabilities.
And it's not just theoretical. They're already reporting commercial interest and collaborations with some pretty big players.
Yeah.
Like Merck and Pharmaceuticals and HPE Group.
Yeah.
So why should this grab people's imaginations? Why is this so exciting?
Well, if we think about the kind of the long-term impact here, this isn't just about, incremental improvements in AI.
Right.
This is about potentially unlocking these entirely new paradigms of AI by harnessing the really unique capabilities of quantum mechanics.
Right.
Right. So imagine AI that can design new molecules for medicines with unprecedented speed and precision.
Right.
Or develop these incredibly sophisticated financial forecasts that could lead to, greater economic stability. While quantum AI is still in its very early stages, this really does demonstrate a fundamentally different and potentially transformative pathway to the future of AI.
It's like giving AI this entirely different kind of computational power and a unique form of data to learn from.
Yep.
But of course, as quantum AI matures and becomes more powerful, what are some of the bigger picture implications that we might need to think about?
Yeah, well, I think one major area to watch is the potential impact on cryptography.
Right.
Right. So many of our current digital security systems rely on these encryption algorithms that could theoretically be broken by very powerful quantum computers.
Right.
So the advancement of quantum AI really necessitates the development and adoption of what's called quantum-resistant cryptography to safeguard our digital infrastructure.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the spirit of open collaboration in the AI world. So Sentient has launched Open Deep Search, or ODS, which is an open source AI search system.
Okay.
And surprisingly, it's actually outperforming some pretty big proprietary models like GPT-4o and Perplexity in terms of factual accuracy on certain benchmarks.
Wow.
And so that's a pretty significant achievement for an open source project.
Yeah, the data here is really compelling. So ODS achieved this reported accuracy of 75.3% on this specific factuality benchmark compared to, 50.5% for ChatGPT 4o search preview and 44.4% for Perplexity Sonar reasoning Pro.
Okay.
So this really challenges this conventional wisdom
Yeah.
that you need, these massive proprietary development efforts and these closed ecosystems to really achieve cutting-edge AI.
Right.
It really suggests that the power of community-driven innovation in that open source space can really lead to some highly competitive results.
So what's the takeaway for you from this? Like, what's the big message?
I think if you think about the broader implications, this really demonstrates this potential for open source AI to democratize access to these powerful AI tools and to provide these viable alternatives to those, very dominant commercial offerings that we see. It also raises these interesting questions about, future business models for AI. Right. So Sentient's approach to monetization is through this novel fingerprinting technology, which basically verifies the source and the integrity of the information. It's a particularly innovative aspect to watch as a potential model for sustainable open source AI development.
We're also seeing this really rapid progress in the realm of AI agents.
Right.
So these are AI systems that are designed to perform tasks autonomously.
Okay.
So General Agents recently unveiled ACE, which they're calling an AI computer autopilot that can actually use your mouse and keyboard to execute tasks, claiming to do so at what they call superhuman speeds.
Wow.
Which is a pretty bold claim.
It is, but the demonstrations that they've done are quite compelling. So imagine being able to just, tell your computer to edit a video.
Right.
And then ACE will directly interact with the video editing software using the same interface that a human would.
Right.
So it really kind of blurs these lines between human and machine interaction with our digital tools.
And then you've got Lindy, which has introduced this swarms feature, which allows their AI agents to actually replicate themselves and work in parallel on multiple tasks at the same time.
Wow.
And they gave an example of, sending 370 personalized emails in just seconds, which is a task that would typically, take a human being an entire workday.
Yeah.
So it's kind of mind-blowing to think about just the sheer increase in efficiency.
It is, yeah. The swarms capability really it underscores this potential for AI to handle these large-scale repetitive tasks, with incredible speed and efficiency, essentially acting as this coordinated team of digital assistants.
So why should these advancements in AI agents be something that people are paying attention to?
Well, if we think about kind of the less obvious shifts that are happening, these developments really suggest this future where AI could significantly augment our personal and professional productivity.
Right.
Automating these complex workflows that involve this direct interaction with our computers, it could even lead to, the emergence of what are essentially like AI employees, capable of handling, this wide range of tasks. It also raises these profound questions, I think, about how we will interact with technology in the future. And the potential for individuals to achieve far more with these powerful AI collaborators.
Okay. Finally, let's touch on some interesting emerging trends in the business of AI.
Okay.
So one concept that's gaining some traction is productized services. So this is where AI is helping service-based businesses to become more scalable and efficient, almost transforming their offerings into like standardized, repeatable products.
Right.
Which sounds like a pretty significant shift in how service industries might operate.
What's interesting here is how AI can help service businesses overcome these traditional limitations on growth and scalability, potentially leading to higher profit margins and really new ways of delivering their expertise to a much wider audience.
We're also seeing this rise of AI middlemen, which are companies that specialize in taking these powerful foundational AI models and then tailoring and customizing them for the specific needs of different industries. Adding, valuable domain expertise and context. And this just feels like this natural evolution as the technology matures.
Exactly. As these large general purpose AI models become more readily available, the real value is increasingly in the ability to effectively apply them and adapt them to really solve specific problems within those sectors.
And then on the creative front, the idea of this sketching economy is emerging, which suggests that as AI kind of takes over more of the technical execution in creative fields, uniquely human skills like taste, ideation, and strategic vision become even more valuable.
Right.
And we might see this this rise of what are called, AI workflow designers.
Yeah.
Who are people who specialize in creating and managing these complex AI-powered workflows? So it seems like AI is not just automating jobs, it's also creating whole new categories
Right.
of work.
Exactly. It's driving this kind of redefinition of skills and creating these new opportunities that we're only just beginning to understand.
So as someone who's really trying to understand the big picture, what's the key takeaway for you from these business-oriented developments?
Well, if we kind of synthesize all of these trends, I think it becomes clear that the AI revolution isn't just about the technological advancements themselves.
Right.
It's also fundamentally reshaping, established business models. It's fostering these entirely new entrepreneurial ventures.
Right.
And it's driving this really significant shift, I think, in the skills and expertise that are going to be most sought after in this evolving economy.
So there you have it, our deep dive into some of the most significant AI developments from late March and early April 2025, from really groundbreaking research that's pushing the boundaries of AI reasoning,
right,
to these real-world applications that are tackling some really big challenges like cancer,
right,
and the emergence of these AI agents that are poised to really transform how we interact with technology.
Yeah.
It's clear that this field is moving at just an incredible pace.
Right.
You also touched on the complexities of navigating AI regulation and the exciting potential of open source initiatives and quantum computing to really shape the future of this transformative technology.
Yeah, I think we hope this deep dive has provided you with some really clear and actionable insights into where AI is heading.
Yeah.
There are so many fascinating threads to continue exploring. What are the long-term implications of quantum AI?
Right.
How is that landscape of AI governance going to evolve?
Yeah. Does open source AI have the potential to really disrupt the status quo? What resonates most with you? What questions are all these developments sparking in your mind?
This is really just the beginning of the conversation. To stay on top of all these really rapidly evolving developments, I encourage you to subscribe to Before AGI Weekly for your regular dose of essential AI news and an in-depth analysis. And if you're looking to get more hands-on and explore the practical side of AI, be sure to check out my YouTube channel, Ian Ochieng, Ochieng AI, where you'll find tutorials and resources to help you kind of navigate this really exciting landscape.
Yeah.
What new skills might you develop? What innovative projects might you undertake with this knowledge? That's a thought worth diving into.